Hello everyone, Brick Horizon here, and this time we have a mock of the Republic V-Wing Starfighter. I originally made a review of this as the premiere video for my channel, but it's seen a lot of improvements since then, and I didn't have instructions yet, so now I'm remastering this and some of my other videos like the Skeleton Crew ships, and eventually the Y-Wing that I'll be making instructions for too. I originally made this after the UCS TIE Interceptor came out because I noticed that it had a piece that would make building this look really good, however it's still very expensive, but I'll get into the specifics later. The V-Wing was a staple of the Republic and was also one of the first LEGO sets that I got, so remaking it brought back a lot of fun memories, but I also recently updated it because there were a few things that I missed and I knew I could improve upon. I'll be unlisting the original video a week after this is posted, so go check that out, but for now I'll give you a quick rundown of the original version that I made with some of the changes. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I used pieces that were made for the UCS TIE Interceptor, and those were the seamless 1x6 slopes that were used on the arms of the ship. Unfortunately, it would have been about $6.50, but if it does go down in price, feel free to use them instead. For now, I've replaced them with some of the curved slopes to get the best angle. While I wish that they didn't have to be the curved ones, this was the best solution I could find without remaking the entire section, especially since I had designed it specifically using the snot technique to show off the original pieces. Anyways, I did take some inspiration from other models, like using the mud flap where the ring around the windscreen is, and some of how the details like the black parts are laid out, but the rest is all my design. The black V part doesn't have a connection, but it should hold with friction unless you hold it upside down and shake it. This section uses the snot technique for a few reasons, and it's mostly to keep it very smooth, but it allowed me to get more detail that I wouldn't have been able to get otherwise, like the change in thickness and some of the lines like the dark gray pieces that I used. I also built the tip of the nose out of snot and tried to use a lot of greebling. Originally the tip was colored differently, and I went from dark tan, which looks like this, on the original, to just light gray, since a lot of references show it as a solid color all the way through. But it's only two pieces that you'd need to change if you prefer one or the other. You might also want to make them yellow, since I've seen that as well. Another place that you might want to change to yellow if you do that is on the wings. I didn't realize that the top and bottom wings were different until I started making the instructions and found out that they were when looking back at references. The top one notably has this marking in dark tan, and if you change the tip to dark tan or both of them to yellow, then it would match, and that's personally what I would do since I'd like mine to stand out, but I understand people wanting theirs to conform. More of the differences between the top and the bottom wing are the markings on both the inside and outside. Originally, I only had markings on the outside, but I realized that there are some on the inside of the wings, with the top one being longer and the bottom one being a bit shorter and not extending to the tip of the wing. On the outside of the wing, I changed the pieces to include the dark tan marking, but I also recolored the bottom one to have a separation instead of solid dark gray markings. I also noticed one last change that I wanted to make, and that's by making it so that the bottom ones actually slant outwards and kind of make a Y shape, if you can see what I mean here, but the top ones are both going the same way. When you get a V-Wing, you always expect it to have the wing functionality, and originally it wasn't included. Well, I did have a sort of good reason for it, being that the Bad Batch version had the wings move in an impractical way for LEGO. I did end up fixing it so it works more like the LEGO set, with both wings moving at the same time into the landing position. Also, what I meant by the Bad Batch version being why my old design was, well, bad, was because in order to get the wings in the right position, both of them needed to rotate a different amount, and since they're facing completely backwards, you could see where this starts to get difficult, since one of them would need to spin 270 degrees while the other would be limited to 90. So you'd originally take the wings off and move them to the back, but now they'll move at the same time and even have a gear in there for friction, so it's not a manual problem. At the ends of the arms are some red pieces that I used this rounded boat piece and inverted the connection with a round jumper and hole piece. There are also guns at the end of the wing, and I was able to use the Technic pins and some rods to represent them. I wasn't able to add a retractable landing gear due to size constraints, but I added some extra pieces to act as landing gear in case you wanted to display it that way. However, they aren't necessary for the support, since it would be able to hold itself on its belly, but I know that that isn't always favorable when you're working with mocks that are supposed to be accurate. And speaking of accurate, the V-Wing isn't exactly minifigure scale since it's about 1/31st, but I think that it matches the scale to the windscreen piece instead of the actual minifigure, so it should look more proportionate. I also almost forgot about this, but the stand. This isn't included in the base mock, but if you want to have the stand to display it on, then you can also find it in the description. It's a free add-on, and it would work with any small ship or mock that you have. The base is wide enough to support the V-wing, and it has a single axle with pin connectors sheathing it, and a connection at the end to hold everything up. This connects under the ship, and if we have a look at the bottom, you can also see how I made some of these connections. I used the ball joints to get the right angles and connections. I used ball joints to make sure that everything was sturdy, but also to get the right angles. This is how I connected the snot bricks, and I just did it in a slightly different way since the bricks here are upside down versus them being sideways. I also kept as many of the markings as I could. There's a lot of details in the back as well, and from a ship design perspective, it feels rather cluttered. But on LEGO's official V-Wing, this section is just a few large parts, and it also acts as the landing gear. However, this seems to make the actual V shape in universe, so it should have a gap like I have it here. There are also some extra angled flag pieces that I used to get some extra shaping in the back. I'm not exactly sure what a lot of this does, but it looks cool nonetheless. There's a little more greebling separating this and the engines, which are usually made with these barrel pieces. I've also added a green engine glow, plus they're connected to the body with these flickfire missile pieces. Lastly, there is the top. I included an astromech head in the renders just to show off that you can put it there, but it's not included in the mock inventory. The heat sinks are another thing that I changed the connection on. I didn't mention this earlier, but the original wings were connected with hinge bricks and droid arms, which isn't very stable and would have been horrible with the manual moving. But now that I've refined it, it has an actual connection and there's no need to worry about anything falling off. The last thing that I changed was inside the cockpit. While I said earlier that this is scaled to the windscreen piece I used, I didn't include any way for the minifigure to interact with it. Since there was only one seat and some internal connections that were showing, now I've added a little control panel so it looks like there's something for him to be aiming with. Originally, I built this to be the Imperial V-Wing from the Bad Batch, but I decided to make this based on the Republic version since it's more widespread. However, you can see the variants that I made with the original build. The one we've been reviewing this whole time is the Republic red and gray version. The Imperial one has the colors flipped, but with dark gray instead of dark red, and also the bottom is almost completely dark gray. I also made this custom Plows Bros version that has dark blue and white with a different colored tip. Originally, I made it yellow, kind of like some of the depictions of the Republic version, but I think it looks great with the muted dark tan as well. Unfortunately, there isn't a way for me to make sub-inventories on Rebrickable, and even though I've suggested it, they're not very direct with suggestions, so we don't know if it will happen. For now, you can make the color changes yourself by selecting the pieces on Bricklink and using the color change tool. Rebrickable's algorithm doesn't like it when you post multiple similar mocks, but if you do want to see me post both of the other ones, then let me know in the comments below. I've created a lot of custom LEGO Star Wars mocks, so if you're interested to see what else I have in store, then like and subscribe and comment what else you'd like to see from me. I'll also be unlisting the original review video that I made of the V-Wing a week after this is posted, so check that out if you're interested. But for now, thank you all for watching and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.